they played a middle-class couple, and he, I think, was a riveter or something. He went off to work with his little lunch pail. And one night, their son is turning on the radio at 7 o'clock or so, and hears something that is unusual. He goes and tells his parents that God spoke to him on the radio. And so they, of course, are suspicious. And the next night, it happens again and again. And then there's a scene toward the end of the film where people have gathered in churches, and there's these big console radios because it took place back in the day. And people are listening, tuning in to hear the voice of God. Interestingly, now Dory Sherry was he did a lot of schlock movies, as I understand it.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that. Maybe
he was a little more serious in a lot of those.
Yeah. There were some wonderful classic films, but he was very careful not to have the voice of God in the movie. So it was always reporting on what God had said over the radio. Well, later I find myself called to the ministry, and I have a radio ministry.
Yeah.
And only later did I see that film on Turner Classic Movies, watched the movie and thought, my gosh, I wonder if that had anything to do with my call, that was just but I'll always remember that film, which hardly anyone knows.
No,
but
it isn't very well known.
It's
no stars. So Whitmore was maybe a minor star, and Nancy Davis never really caught on.
So it was just one of the small films by a well-known director, but it certainly had apparently an impact on me, at least somewhere under the surface.
So as far as the question of whether films can inspire or whatever, yes, on some level, they can.
Yeah. Have you shown any of the great biblical epics? Do you consider those to be classic films?
We would, but some of them are so long.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And some of the now that we're doing DVD, we are hoping that we can show things. See, what limited us before was anything in CinemaScope.
Right.
We couldn't show.
Didn't have
so
the
something
lens.
like Ben-Hur would have been impossible.
Yeah.
But now that we've branched into DVD, we can show some of those things, but we do have a certain amount of time, so we do have to account for how long we have the hall to be able to show certain things. But yes, that would be, we have so many in our own personal collections between three of us members of the group that we don't have to obtain films for quite some time.
Right.
But that is something definitely to consider, something like Ben-Hur or King of Kings.
Well, we saw a documentary once at a conference called Jesus Christ Movie Star. And it was a documentary about the earliest silent films that tried to tell the biblical story.
Oh, yes.
Right up to Monty Python's
Was it Life of Brian?
Life of Brian,
Yep.
And then, of course, some of the newer films, too, the Mel Gibson film and so on. Some of them are classics because people who have a religious faith want to see them over and over, and they've lived on that way, although they may not be great films, and they certainly may not be very biblical in the long run.
Yeah. But
King of Kings, for years, was probably the most seen silent movie made because it kept being shown in churches.
When do you remember the first movies that you saw as children?
A little bit. I think the first one I saw, well, this will date me, was The Three Lives of Thomasina, or at least the first one I remember. It was about 1963.
Yeah. I don't know that film.
Disney.
the first movie I remember being in a theater for, and it was a re-showing of The Sound of Music. And today it's still one of my favorites. I absolutely love it.
I also want to talk a little bit about science fiction films that, again, are part of the escapism, but in many ways provide us with a way to look ahead. A lot of movies tell history and look back and record history, or perhaps lie about it or paint it with different colors.
Right.
Science fiction pulls us into the future, assuring us that there is one, I suppose, but also the different genres there are our ability to overcome an unseen enemy, or to live into the fantasies of how we ourselves would cope in a different day and time.
Yeah, I think for a while, actually, from the 60s to the early 70s, they're all pretty bleak. Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
2001 was, I think that was an unhappy ending. And then Star Wars showed up.
Yeah. Which was essentially a Western, pretty much.
Yes.
wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Just a
Exactly.
Western in a different telling. When you look at the classic films, and do people come and talk about the films later when you show them? Do you have a time for discussion?
Yes, it just kind of happens, actually. I mean, we've got some people will ask questions when it's over.
Well, you're billed as the expert or the historian, or
I guess so.
There's no guessing about it.
so
Yes.
when you introduce the film, as Robert Osborne would do on Turner Classic Films, and
That was the idea, actually.
yeah, and then afterward, people do kind of hang out and talk a little bit.
Yes.
Some of the films would generate more discussion than others.
Yes.
Any controversial films that drew a lot of attention?
Not that I can think of,
Not
but you
really.
might. You've been with
Well,
it
we've had
longer.
some which may have been controversial because they weren't good.
Yes.
Yeah.
But in fact, the one actually we probably had the biggest argument over was a German silent called The White Hell of Pitzpalu.
Yep.
It's an avalanche movie, and I liked it, and everybody else hated it. So
One of the characters spends a good portion of time strapped to a piece of ice. It's one we still talk about today that we will never ever show again. Yeah.
But to you, it was a classic.
to me, it was. The photography was really good in that.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
And that's another nice thing. We don't always agree on
Yes.
what are. He and I have had not heated discussions, but there's movies like, oh, we have to show. I absolutely love this, and he'll sit there and, no, that was not good at
Okay,
all.
If we have to, yes.
Yeah. But yeah, we make a lot of
But
sacrifices.
you're only choosing 12 movies a year. So that must be difficult to come down to one that you're going to show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you decide yourself, or do you have a committee?
No, it's a committee. Whoever shows up at that particular meeting.
We hope that we can get all members to come, and we stress that, well, if you don't, it'll be, whoever shows up, their final decision.
Yeah.
But we also try to, like the films, the last two films, and now Red River are the Howard Hawks
Howard Hawks.
films,
yeah.
to do like a little, maybe focus on a director or focus on an actor. We also
kind of
try
series.
to sometimes, like at Christmas time, we're showing Desk Set. Now, people don't think of that as a Christmas film, but it takes place during the Christmas season.
Yeah.
We talked about, what we might plan for the future. I have the Song of Bernadette. I said that'd be nice maybe around Easter. So we do think about what holidays might be coming up too.
Yeah. And foreign films have made it into the
Yes,
cut.
we generally have one French film every year as a
Yeah.
tradition because for some reason they draw well.
Yes.
And we've had, in the past, we had German films. We were able to borrow from a friend in Syracuse a number of German silent films. And he's gone now, alas, but
Yeah. I think that the power of film is to tell a story apart from the stars, apart from the cinematography. If the story is there, you can forgive,
Yes.
a bad shot.
Yes.
I don't know that you can forgive a bad actor, but you can. There are wonderful actors whose names we've never heard. They are the people whose names don't even get the credit necessarily, and certainly don't get awards. But they can move us as they tell their stories.
Yes.
yes.
And what about youthful films? you have pretty much an older adult audience. Are there some films about youth that have made the cut for classics?
Well, I remember one, Tolerable David, which was a silent movie from 1921 about a young man who's trying to live up to his family's duties, but by, well, since this is set way back in West Virginia during the maybe around 1900, the big thing for him is carrying the mail. And there are 3 bullies in town who want to steal it from him. That got really intense. And another case where we had people crying in the theater.
So films can touch us, and I encourage you, as you watch films in the theater or watch Turner Classic Movies or go to Broome Community College once a month, you can find Binghamton Classic Films online by doing a Google search for it. My guests today have been Lisa Powell and the film historian, Eric Swan. And I'm Jeff Kellam, hoping that in the coming week you'll be gentle with people and with yourself. Thank you for watching Encounter, and thanks to WBNG and WNBF.